So welcome everybody. I am Dr. Deirdre Pickerel. I'm the Dean of Student Success at Yorkville University and Toronto Film School. And on behalf of the Student Success team and specifically the Career Services team, I'm really thrilled today to welcome you to another one of our bi-weekly Career Services webinar. Today's topic is finding work during COVID-19. And, we know that there's been some incredible losses, but also still some gains in the labor market. Natalia's going to talk to you today about, specific ways to look for work and to find work during this time of our global pandemic that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. We are joined today by Linda Folster, career advisor attached to the, I was almost going to say New Brunswick, New Westminster campus, and Alexi Verikin is here from our Ontario Steeles campus. But of course, as you all know, Career Services serves all students across all programs, all brands, Yorkville University Toronto Film School. So even if you don't have a career advisor attached to your specific campus, we are here to help you. Now, just as we begin, we do want to acknowledge that the land Yorkville University operates on in British Columbia, where I personally am located, is the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples of the Kakite and Coquitlam First Nations. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to your host today, Natalia, and I'm going to exit stage left. There is a Q&A panel at the end, and Linda's going to coordinate your questions. Enjoy the session, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks for another Career Services webinar. So Natalia, over to you.
Thank you, Deirdre, for introducing us. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Markman. I'm one of the 3 career advisors with Toronto Film School, Yorkville University. And today we are going to be talking about finding work during COVID-19. If you are following our webinars, you probably know that how we divide our services and webinars is by 4 main topics. So exploring job market, preparing for work, finding work, and also maintaining your career when you're working. So today we are going to be talking about finding work. So what actions you can take to actually secure a job opportunity, but also with a twist, because obviously in the last year, everyone is really worried about what's happening with jobs, especially if you were a student and you're just starting your path, you're just starting to look for a job or preparing to, start looking for a job. You're probably worried about how it's going to be for you, what you need to do maybe different than before you were a student in order to secure those jobs. So we decided that putting together this webinar is going to be extremely important for you to understand what have changed in the job market in the past year and what are some new realities for both employers and the job seekers. A little bit about myself. I have about 5 years of experience working mainly in a non-for-profit sector. So before I came into Toronto Film School, I was working in social services with people who are looking for jobs, newcomers. In the last couple of years, I was focusing on youth pre-employment groups. So I was teaching them how to look for a job, especially if they have some barriers to employment. And I'm always been passionate about helping clients get their confidence before they start looking for work and know what are their strengths so they can share it with their potential employer. I do have Masters of Immigration Settlement Studies from Ryerson University, and I'm with Toronto Film School from November of last year. I would like to start with a question. Like Deirdre mentioned, we are using a program that's called Menti. So you can see it on the top of my screen. You can use your phone for that, or your laptop, or your tablet. Just put www.menti.com and use the code that's on the screen. Alexia and Linda, if you can, one of you can please put this code in the chat for our participants. It's 89650412. All of your responses are anonymous, so you're not going to see your name. I'm not going to know who responded to that. And I just want to ask you one simple question. What are your top 3 concerns about looking for work during the pandemic? Please respond via Menti, because then we're going to see it on the screen rather than in the chat. Anybody? What are your main worries? What are you afraid of? Looking for work during this situation in the world right now. Okay, we have some responses coming in. That the work will be cut abruptly. Oh, so you're gonna like lose a job, I'm assuming. No jobs, employer optioning for more experienced workers as for students. Okay, anything else? Not enough jobs available, working on site not safe. Yeah, that's one of the main concerns for people nowadays. Not confident because feeling down. Oh, I can totally relate to that. Working from home for the last year, I can definitely relate to that because I'm that kind of person who loves to go to the office and talk to my colleagues. Having to work on site, so I see a common theme here. Higher qualified people will be taken, need to be too unique as a beginner, don't want to catch COVID. So definitely we have a lot of responses about this worry about being on site. Not enough experience, lack of opportunities, lack of experience, not able to relocate for work due to pandemic. That's another legit concern. Looking for work when we come to Toronto. Employers are hesitant to onboard new graduates. Working from home experience. Economy is low. What else? Anybody else? Okay, I think these are all main concerns we have. So I definitely see a common theme here. Is definitely, you know, people are afraid of getting sick. Obviously, yes, we know that we're getting, you know, the rollout of vaccines, but it is still quite slow. And for some of us who are, you know, younger than certain age, we're not going to get it for another few months at least. So definitely, you know, it's a concern that you have going back to work. How to stand out from others. So I definitely see two common things. So people just afraid of COVID related stuff, and people are afraid of you know, overall concerns that everybody has before they start looking for work as a graduate. So not just pandemic related, but also overall concern about looking for work, starting your career path. And we are gonna talk about, you know, what are some strategies that you can use to look for a job overall, and especially in today's situation as well. Thank you all for your responses. Oops, sorry. So in our new reality, we are all working from home, and some of you who need to look for a job, you need to look for a job from your couch, basically. And it might sound frustrating, and I'm actually one of those people who landed a job during the pandemic, and so as both of my colleagues on my team, it happened, like we all got a job during the pandemic. You know, the world has not ended. There's you know, still jobs available. I know many people from my friends and family members and my colleagues and former colleagues, people I worked with as my clients as well, who found job you know, during pandemic, or who even switched from one job to another because they had a goal and they continued to basically be persistent about their goal. So there's always going to be movement in the labor market, because we as people, we have needs, we need certain things, we buy things, we spend money. So there's obviously some movement going on in the job market always. So change is basically a double-sided coin. So yes, we do have a loss. Some people lost their jobs, but there's also new opportunities opening up for people in specific industries, especially. So you just need to start changing your mindset, opening up for new opportunities, getting more creative about your job search. And today I am going to share some more creative way instead of just sitting and applying on Indeed. And that's the first question I ask all my students I work with. How are you looking for a job? And I hear the word Indeed in almost every appointment that I have with every student. And there's so many other ways of looking for a job, especially now. Indeed is not, you know, the only option for you. There's so many other possibilities that you can use, and I'm going to talk about it today as well. We also need to keep in mind that expectations of employers are of the employers are changing, and we as job seekers, we need to adjust to their new expectations that they have, because they had to pivot as well, because they have businesses they need to run. So they had to come up with some new solutions for problems they had during the pandemic. So just to let you know, career services are here for you. So if you have any additional questions after this webinar about anything I presented on, or if you need any templates, examples, or anything like that, just reach out to us directly, and I'm going to share our contact information at the end as well. Agenda for today, I'm going to share a little bit of the stats, very new information, statistics about unemployment, what is happening in the job market right now. We're going to learn about how pandemic has affected the Canadian labor market. I'm going to share 5 best ways to look for work during the pandemic. So like I said, aside from Indeed, what else we can do? We're going to talk about employers' new expectations that they have to job seekers, and how we as job seekers should respond to that. And I'm going to share some strategies for finding work in basically any economic downturn, right? This is not first time in the job market where when something happened, financial defaults, all of these things were happening before Great Depression, if you go back in time. So there's always some change going on in the job market, and hopefully it's gonna get better, obviously, after this pandemic. But we need to be prepared, and we need to be open-minded and be more creative about our strategies. I'm also going to share some additional job seekers tips about how to adjust to new realities, and how to make sure that you stand out from the crowd when you're looking for a job. This quote explains a lot, and definitely can be relevant to many of us. Plan, update resume, search for work from home jobs, clean out the closet, join an exercise class, catch up on emails. Reality, eat another bowl of ramen, take 3 naps. I can definitely relate to that. Some of you said that you're feeling down, you're feeling unmotivated to look for work. This is how many of us are feeling right now. You need to find ways, you need to find strategies. How do you motivate yourself? How to, adjust your work to find some disciplining methods for yourself, so you can, still do everything you need to do from home. And I'm sure all of you, because you were a student and that was your job that you were doing in the last year, you were a student, you had to do some team projects, you still need to work with your coworkers, not coworkers, team members that you had for your projects. You guys still had to do all this from home. You had to find ways to communicate with each other. You had to find ways to discipline yourself to, hand in your projects, your essays, your, any other projects that you might have for school. And when you're finding a job and you're going to maybe, working from home as well, you need to find ways how to still get your motivation, still do your work, maybe planning out your days, or allocating some time for your work. So that also takes some adjustment and discipline, and we all had to go through this. This is the new reality at the moment, and we're going to talk about that later in the presentation. Some of that might still stay for longer. I know a lot of people who got their job, the new job that they got, it said permanently remote. And I know many people who actually moved out from Toronto because they got permanently remote jobs, and they don't see a point of staying here because they don't need to go to the office, so they just moved out from Toronto for cheaper areas. So some employers realize that they don't have to pay for rent, they don't have to pay for utilities, they don't have to have an office, because everyone is working pretty well and adjusted working from home. So this reality might still be, permanent reality for some people, while some people will have to go back to work eventually when the vaccines are rolled out, when everyone gets vaccinated. With situation in the world changing, some of us might have to go back to work. So let's talk stats. I think it's important to share some statistics with you, because it represents what's actually happening in the job market with numbers. So obviously, impact of COVID-19 on the labor market has been pretty severe. You probably all watch TV, have social media, you hear about that every single day, and it doesn't sound too positive, right? So let's see what was actually happening. So in the first 2 months, March and April of 2020, Canada lost more than 3 million jobs from the workforce of just over 19 million people in total. The worst months were April and May, and then there was a bounce back with nearly 2.4 million jobs added between May and September. We had a pretty good summer. We didn't have a lockdown in summer, so it was kind of getting better. And obviously, we got a second wave hit in September, October. So the recovery from that initial loss was getting a bit slower. So overall, as of October 2020, and this is the most recent data available when this webinar was actually developed, employment levels are approximately 635,000 workers below the February peak in employment. Obviously, there are some groups that were hit the most, for example, youth who take a lot of customer service jobs, for example, in the summer working in restaurants, Wonderland, tourism, hospitality. All of this is closed. We're still on lockdown, so many youth lost their jobs. Retail, hospitality industries, specific industries like airlines, for example, food and beverage, clothing stores. They had to either limit amount of people who work there or just shut down completely. So those groups of people were hit the most. On your screen, you can actually see an unemployment rate in Canada in 2020 by province. And Canada overall saw a 9.5 unemployment rate. And this is a huge increase from 5.6 in 2019. Many of you, as students, you're probably from Ontario. Ontario saw 9.6 unemployment in 2020, comparing to 5.9 the year before. And if you're a student from BC, your province increased from unemployment rate increased from 4.7 in 2019 to 8.8% last year, which is also pretty sad. But like I said, it's a double-sided coin. So when some industries are shrinking, other industries are growing really fast. And I see a lot of people in, with specific professions or specific skill sets getting hired pretty quickly. Customer service all switched to online. So people in customer service, delivery drivers, we all order food, we all order clothes, stuff from Amazon, things from Walmart, your groceries, whatever you need. There are delivery drivers who can get it to your home. IT and support desk specialists, obviously we are working from home. If something happens with my computer, I go to Yorkville University tech support and they have to fix it because I'm working from home. So that's their job, to make sure that our job is not being affected by any technical issues. So they're obviously in demand right now. Supply chain specialists, just because people still buying stuff, people still need things, and there's supply chains everywhere. And people who work there. Warehouse workers, for obvious reasons. Working from home jobs, anything that can be done from home with your laptop or documents can be done from home, basically. So any admin related work, HR, finance, whatever, you name it, IT specialists, security analysts, and architects. So if you have a computer, you can work from home, basically. If you don't need like special equipment, you can work from home. And many people who thought they would never be able to work from home, they actually ended up working from home. For example, I was in social services, like I said, and when we had this first wave hit in March, we were told we're working from home. You have 2 weeks to figure it out, but we were going to start running our youth pre-employment groups like in 2 weeks. So figure out your new curriculum, figure out how you're going to do in-class activities online, we didn't know how to do it. I had to switch my whole thing, my whole work processes to make sure that I still serve my clients, I still meet with them, and a job that I never thought I'll be able to do from home. I had to, and I had to adjust and find new ways. And so as many people, in my organization and any other job that, people were not sure how they're gonna pivot, but they did actually. And, to this day, I still do mock interviews with students who work with me and resume review, and I still do webinars instead of in-class workshops. So we adjusted, and many businesses had to do the same. What else expanded? Essential retail and healthcare. So obviously there's not so many people in retail, but there are new, online stores have opened, so they needed people as well. Cleaners, maintenance workers, and obviously healthcare professionals, because they're in a huge demand right now. All this information is from a Global News article. So if you're interested, you can go and read the full article there. So let's talk about ways to find work during the pandemic. So you can use it in any situation, but especially during the pandemic, these are the top things that you can do. So first of all, research employers, research industries that are actively hiring right now. So what I just showed you on the previous slide, try to do some research online on your specific industry. Talk to your instructors. Reach out to people in your industry who are currently working and ask them, how did you adjust? What did you do? How your employer made you change your processes? What are some skills I need to put on my resume so I can be competitive for this industry? Talk to people who are currently working, because they're going to be the most reliable source of information, because they have been there through the pandemic. If they're still working, they probably changed something. So as a new person entering this market, you need to find ways to enter. So best bet is to talk to people who are already doing it. Conduct information interviews. We had a whole workshop on networking and building connections. So if you're interested to know more, I'm barely going to talk about it today, about informational interviews and networking, but that's what you need to do for looking for a job right now. So instead of just applying online, reach out to people in your industry, build new connections. We talked about it for an hour in our previous webinar. So we share a lot of tips and examples for cold calls, cold emails, how you can reach out to people and book those informational interviews, where you can ask them questions about their job, about their responsibilities, about how they change their processes and how they're adjusting. So try to make those connections as well, instead of just applying for jobs. Add remote friendly words to your written materials. We are going to talk about that in more details in the next slides, but basically, things that have to do with working from home, technology, show them that you're tech savvy, that you know how to communicate with people, even if you're working in a different time zones, in different places, and not in the same office, working from home. How you're using shared documents, like if you know any programs that allow you to share documents and work like multiple individuals working on the same document. So use those remote friendly words to distinguish yourself from everybody else. Show them that you know how to do it. You were a student, even if you're not working last year, you were a student. So like I said, you still had to do all of your work online. So I'm sure you acquired some remote skills that you can put on your resume and mention during your interview. Give examples. What did you do to complete a team project online while studying from home? That's going to be a great example for them of how you're adjusting. So they're going to, understand how you're going to be working as well in their business. Monitor social media for prospective jobs. Employers are heavily relying on social media right now to look for people. Obviously, LinkedIn is the first thing that comes to mind, but especially if you're in a creative industry, like my Toronto Film School students, use other social media, use Instagram, use Facebook to post some samples of your work. Obviously, make sure your profiles are professional. We are talking about that in our previous webinars. So if you want to know more about social media and how to use it for your job search, We did a webinar a month ago, specifically about social media and job search. Create job hunting systems and goals. So don't just apply for jobs for 8 hours a day when you're looking for a job. Decide, I'm going to spend 2 hours for applying, 2 hours for finding new people in my industry. I'll set up an informational interview. I'm going to talk to that person. I'm going to do research on this company. So spread your time and kind of make it more efficient than just sending hundreds of resumes and not doing anything else. Okay, so we got to the main part of that presentation. What are the new realities? What are the new employer expectations that they have to their job seekers, and how we as job seekers can adjust? So I already mentioned, use pandemic skills on your resume, on your cover letter, on your interview. Provide specific example. So think about some of the skills that can be used in your industry, but they can also be remote or pandemic, basically. Include those keywords and accomplishments that you had in the past year on your resume. Demonstrate some soft skills. How do you communicate with people? Talk about your tech skills as well. So make sure you use all these keywords and also check their job posting. Do they have any specific expectations from working from home candidates? If they mention it on a job posting, make sure you use the same words on your resume and cover letter or portfolio, whatever you need to have for your job search. Because when they get your resume, they're going to see all the things that they need from a candidate, and it's going to increase your chances of getting an interview. So let's think some key skills that you think became critical for job seekers during this pandemic. Please use Menti to respond so we can see it on the screen. What do you think are some top skills that come to your mind? Maybe that you developed during pandemic and you think might be useful when you're looking for a job. What are you planning to put in your resume? Again, the code is available on the screen at the top. Ooh, okay, self-care, very important. Time management, definitely. Like we talked about disciplining ourselves of how we spend time on our work or assignments. Definitely. Creative problem solving, communication, adaptability for sure. Zoom calls. We're all super tired of Zoom, but it's not going anywhere yet. So definitely Zoom calls. We have some responses in chat. Organization skills. Hosting webinars, time management, independent, working independently. So you don't have your manager with you in the office. How are you going to manage that? How you're going to do your training if you don't have your manager beside you, where you can just walk in their office and ask a question when you need to be trained. So how are you going to navigate that situation? Self-motivation for sure. Okay, good. Great responses. What else? Embracing innovation, for sure. That's a good one, because everything is changing very fast. So we have to make sure that we're on top of that, especially technical part of it. Strong communication skills. Great responses. Thank you. So make sure you use all these words on your resumes and cover letters and mention it and give examples during your interviews. What else? What are some other expectations? Employers will expect some workers to, like I said, work permanently remote. So for some businesses, this model worked, and that's what they're probably going to continue doing. It's very possible. Oh, we have another great response. Able to time block. That's a good one. Thank you. So yes, for some of us, remote working is going to stay, but some of us might need to go back to the office. So if you open yourself up for both opportunities to work from home and to also, to the possibility of going back to the office at some point, obviously, some employers might be more leaning towards a person who will be okay with both. Another thing that came out of remote working is the fact that now you're not only competing on the Canadian job market, but you're competing with people nationally, globally. So it might be, person working, for Toronto company, working from Vancouver. I recently had a friend who got a job for American company. They only have like 5 people in Toronto, very, very small office. So her work is going to be remote for forever. And that's a very common practice right now. Obviously, it's going to taper off a little bit once vaccine is coming in, but you have to think it through for yourself. Are you okay with, after the vaccine to go back to work? If yes, then you open yourself up for those possibilities of working both from home and in the office, which is better for the employer because they might prefer both. Try to, as a job seeker, try to get creative on how you can distinguish yourself from other candidates, being online. So maybe create a blog, showing your leadership skills. If you volunteered somewhere, trying to post about it on your LinkedIn. Create a video introduction, for example, that you can send to your potential employers or people that you want to get an informational interview with. If you don't have a website portfolio, if it's not really needed for your work, think about it. I know that for creative industries, you have to have a portfolio. That's probably usually on the web. But even if you're not from creative industry, think about ways to create a website that demonstrates some type of work that you are doing, okay? Or add some more information on your LinkedIn that showcases some of the work that you have done for the pandemic. What are some other expectations? Physical distancing and remote work arrangements. One of the new things definitely, wasn't really used before, video interviews, right? Everyone is currently doing video interviews. It's very common, especially if you're going to be working from home. 150% that you're going to get a video interview as well from home. I actually prefer that type of interview. And the reason is because you're in the comfort of your own home. You don't need to go anywhere. We all had probably this experience going to an interview in a winter storm in your winter boots, wearing a nice costume, and you need to like change and make sure you're on time. And it might be frustrating and it's stressful, and you're afraid you're not going to be late. So all these things are not relevant for video interviews. You know the time, you just open your computer, you're in a video interview. But there's still some rules around behavior during video interviews, and that's some of the tips that I can share with you as well. Test your technology. Always test your technology before you go for a video interview. I was actually on a panel before where candidates didn't know how to use headphones. And he had to ask somebody, to fix it, or something was going on with the sound. So definitely, maybe this person didn't check the technology beforehand. And it took about 15 minutes of the interview time to actually figure it out. So make sure you practice everything. You go on Zoom with your friend, you check everything, you make sure it's all working. Yes, situations happen. We might not get internet for a second, it might get lost or something, but that's one thing. But when you're on the screen and trying to fix your technology while being on the screen, that's not really looking good and professional. So make sure you check it ahead of time. Wear professional attire. You're still in an interview. I've seen people wearing hoodies and t-shirts being in an interview with clutter behind their back and family members walking around. Yes, some of us live in small condos, small apartments, and we don't have the luxury of, having a separate office for that. But you can talk to your family members. You can find, you can ask them maybe to go somewhere, groceries for 1 hour when you have an interview. So you have time alone in your space, with a clean background, professional dress or a suit, whatever it is, and you look professional, like it's a real interview. I mean, face-to-face interview. Prepare in advance. So prepare the same way you would prepare for an actual live interview. Practice your questions. You can actually record yourself on Zoom. I do it all the time before my webinars, just to see how much time I spend on responding to talking about every slide. I just see, how I look in the screen. So that's actually a good tip for you. You can record yourself on Zoom and watch it afterwards. Or ask somebody, a friend or family member, to practice with you, or just reach out to Career Services. We actually provide mock interview support. So if you're feeling nervous before your video interview, let us know. We're gonna help you out with that and go for some practice questions. Limit distraction. So as I said, family members walking around, if you have pets, try to occupy them with something while you're in the interview. Use professional body language. You're in a camera, and it does feel weird. You're looking at yourself usually when you're talking instead of the employer, and it's really hard to look right at the camera. I know I don't do it all the time, but as well, try to practice before you go for a video interview. Build rapport. When you have an interview in person, it's really easy to establish this first connection. Because you have a handshake, and you're face to face with the person. You have the small talk. Try to do the same thing over Zoom. At least the small talk portion of it, you can definitely try to do. Talk about the weather. Ask them how the video interviews are going. Do they like them better than face to face interviews? Try to establish this first connection with them. It's actually easier to be more authentic when you're in the comfort of your own home, because like I said, you're not going anywhere. You're still at home on your chair with your computer in a familiar environment. So it actually, for some people, it's actually easier because they're not going anywhere, and it's kind of releases some stress comparing to an actual face-to-face interview. Another tip, follow up. Always follow up. It's the same practice with live interviews and video interviews. Always follow up with employer with a thank you letter, thank you email. Tell them that you're very interested in this opportunity. If you need a sample of a thank you letter, let us know. We can definitely share it with you. Another way of doing interviews, it's also quite a new practice. I participated in those couple of times when I was looking for work in 2020. And it's actually a video interview where you have to record yourself. This part is really uncomfortable for some people because you feel like an actor on the screen. If you're not an actor, that definitely might feel a bit frustrating. Usually have only one chance to record your responses to questions. It's going to be random questions where you just have to record yourself and send the recording to the employer. There are usually practice questions, so always take advantage of that and do the practice questions. Usually it's unlimited times that you can practice. Try to think about what are some questions I might get based on the industry. Read the job posting, see the things that they might require from you. Come up with some examples from your past experiences or studies that you can share, because you never know what questions you might have at the video interview. Try to, yes, there's no human interaction in this type of interview, but you can still kind of practice for some of the questions. If you're not sure how to do it, let us know. We can send you a link to a basic free video interview that you can actually practice on your own. And make sure you still, act as you're in a real interview. Wear professional attire. Choose a neutral background. So same exact things apply for recorded interviews. I recently spoke with my friend who works in human resources, and she said that many people are actually preferring this option now because during an interview, you usually have an HR person, a manager, and director, for example. So all these people need to find time when they're free for this, a person who does the interview, a job seeker, and everyone needs to find a time slot that works for all of you. When you do a video recording, you don't need to look for a time slot. You can just watch all the candidates' videos later, right, on the time when you're actually available. So some employers are starting to use it a lot, especially for first rounds of interviews, to kind of clean up the candidates list and come up with, like, I don't know, 5 names of people that they actually want to meet over Zoom afterwards. So this is like a screening type of an interview. Don't try to act on the screen. Just try to imagine that you're talking to an individual that asks you questions. And usually, actually, they have a person on the screen that asks you questions. Obviously, it's a recorded version, but use your imagination. And like I said, we do have a practice video interview that we can share with you. So feel free to reach out to us. Let's have some fun. Let's try to stay appropriate here because this webinar is being recorded, but try to think of situations, things to avoid during video interviews. I'm sure all of you watched some funny videos on YouTube about different situations that happened with people on Zoom. Let's use our imagination. Just type things that you absolutely should not do on a video interview. Again, use Menti for that. Pets running around. It's actually interesting. I read an article where, like, the person who wrote the article said that actually it's not bad if you have like a pet, because especially if they have a pet as well, it might be like a common ground for small talk, which is an interesting perspective actually. So it's kind of in between. Fixing your hair, people in the background, for sure. Screaming kids, for some of us, it's a reality, so it's hard. So talk maybe to a family member to kind of take care of them. Go intoxicate, for sure. Pick your nose. What else? We have something in chat. Don't put your hands in your nose or don't play with your hair or get distracted. Talking over the person giving the interview, interrupting, for sure. That goes for both video interview and real time and real face-to-face interview. Clutter in the background, for sure. If you have like a busy background at home, try to find just a plain wall where you can sit, just to make sure it's not cluttered. Walking away for sure. Cell phone notifications left on. Yeah, phone is off. Doesn't matter if it's a video interview or not. Definitely. Lack of lighting, too dark, for sure. That's a really good point. They need to see you. Anything else? Okay. Good advice. Talking too loud, camera too high or too low, for sure. Make sure you wear pants, put on the clothing. Yeah, how many of us worked in our pajamas? For sure. And you never know if maybe you need to stand up and reach out for something. So make sure you're fully dressed up. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, some more expectations we have from employers. We have some new interview questions that they're starting to use. For example, what have you been doing to broaden your skills or develop yourself during pandemic? Talk about your education, talk about some new tech skills that you have learned. Maybe you enrolled yourself in some online webinars that you took during pandemic. Give all these examples to them. What have you learned about yourself during the pandemic? Talk about how you handle emotion. Talk about what you do in a time of stress. If you have to work from home and you're not used to work from home, what were some things that you had to adjust? Because if you studied, then you're graduating, so it means you figured it out the year before. So you learn how to do it from home. So talk about all these experience, how you had to adjust and what strategies you used for that. Talk about your resilience, how you find motivation, your attitude towards working from home, etc. They might ask you, can you work from home? Are you willing to come into the office after the pandemic? As I mentioned, you might be asked that question, and people who say, yes, I'm okay with working from home, but I'm okay with going back to the office after pandemic, they might get more chances because, employer might have a plan to go back to the office. So they have to be ready. You have to be ready for that. Ask them questions about onboarding. How are they doing remote onboarding at the moment? Ask them questions about training. How is training happening in the job? The technology, any technology they're using for work. You can definitely ask those questions because you're going to show interest. You're going to show, initiative and finding out all these details so you can be more efficient if you're working from home. Another question, I think that's the last question of this webinar. If you were an employer hiring for your business, let's switch it around. If you were an employer, you have a business and you're hiring during the pandemic, which questions would you ask candidates at the interview? Is there anything specific you would like to ask them if you were hiring? How do you handle stress? We had that question. Come up with something else. What else? Are you an independent worker? And give me an example, please. Good one, for sure. Because manager is not around, so you need to figure out ways of working and completing tasks. So how can you do it? Give me an example of when you had to adapt, for sure. What have you been doing during this pandemic to manage your wellness? That's a great question. Self-care. How do you manage your time? For sure. What else? What is your focus during work hours? Great question. What have you learned about yourself, good and bad? That's a great question. It's what is your strength, what is your weakness question, but in a different way, right? Have you ever worked in a remote setting? For sure. For that question, like I said, you can give example of your academic projects. What time management strategies do you use while working from home? Great one. You can talk about planning out your day, making chunks of time to work on different projects, prioritizing, that's another good one. Checking in with your colleagues throughout the day. Okay, great examples. Good. So if you, as an employer, would ask those questions, you as a job seeker have to be ready to respond to that questions as well. How will you develop relationship with coworkers? Definitely. How would you develop it if you're working in different parts of Canada? Like for example, our team, myself and Alexi, who work in Ontario, Linda and our boss Deidre, she's working from they're both working from BC, and we don't even know when we're going to see each other. I never met them in person. I was hired and I never saw some of the people I'm working with. Another question in the chat, how would you schedule your day, including lunch hour? That's a good one. For some jobs, it's going to be very strict. On your computer, you need to log in, log out every time you're off your computer. For some people, it's kind of, there's more freedom around that. But people who work with a lot of confidential information, for example, I know in social services, distress centers, for example, they have to log in, log out every time they're off their computers. So it's very, very strict. Great questions. Okay. I think that's the last, one of the last slides. Those of you who have been following us, you probably saw this graph before on our other webinars, and it basically explains how employers are hiring. So they actually start from their networks, from people inside their company. And the last resort they use is job boards, because they don't like to pay for those job postings. So it's the last thing they use. And people who are looking for a job, they're actually initial thing we do is we go to job boards. And we actually, especially during the pandemic, we need to start from the other side. We need to start from our networks. So that's where we can actually book informational interviews, reach out to people for networking purposes, ask them to meet with you. Remember, in the beginning of this presentation, I was talking about how you can actually book those informational interviews and ask them, how do you adjust? You're in this industry for a few years. I'm just entering this industry. How did you adjust? What are some skills that I need to put in my resume so I have more chances? There are a bunch of virtual networking events available online through Eventbrite, LinkedIn, Meetup. If you're not sure where to look, talk to us. We can direct you to those. Reach out to people on LinkedIn, create connections for LinkedIn as well. I talk about it a lot in our social media webinar as well. So please go and watch it if you want to know more. And I also talk about personal branding, how you can create your personal brand through social media, throughout all your social media. So people that you connect with over social media, they know who you are, what your skills are, etc. All of this information is in my previous webinar about social media and how to use it for job searching. So feel free to use it as your guide if you want to know more, or reach out to us and we can definitely have a discussion about it. So very quickly, what is an informational interview? It's a meeting that you arrange and lead. So it's not a job interview. It's an interview that you lead to ask questions from the person who works in the industry. It's an opportunity to get some insight about the industry from people who work there. It's a chance to learn about how you might fit in this industry or that job. It's not a job interview, like I said, so there's no pressure, for them to like you. You're the one who asks questions, and it's a chance to add another person to your professional network. Some additional tips. Add ready to work on your Indeed and LinkedIn. There's a button where you can put, and on your picture on LinkedIn and Indeed, you're going to have ready to work. So recruiters will see your profile and they're going to see that you're ready for opportunities, you're open for work. Start applying as well, start to reach out to people. Include experience with remote technologies. We talked about it, keywords for your resume, cover letter, interview. Talk about how you use video platforms, share documents like Google Docs, share Drive. How do you work with colleagues in different time zones? Add the word remote to all of your experience throughout your platforms, throughout your documents. Be patient and consistent, because yes, job searching is tough by itself, and pandemic adds another level of stress on top of it. And I'm not gonna lie about that, but it's still possible. I myself and many people I know found jobs throughout pandemic, changed jobs. So life is going on, and we need to adjust, and that's the new reality. So basically, I want to end up with a quote: if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. So be open-minded, be creative about your job search. I shared some of the tips with you and advice on how you can do it. Use all these strategies so you increase your chances of getting an opportunity as soon as possible. If you have any questions, if you need any links to our webinars, any resources, that we talked about today, please, if you're a Yorkville student, email to careerservices@yorkvilleu.ca. If you're a Toronto Film School student, careerservices@torontofilmschool.ca. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing screen, and thank you for my colleagues Alexa and Linda to join me right now. I would like to open the floor for some questions. We have another about 10 minutes of our time for some questions that you might have. feel free to put it in Q&A or in the chat below, and we're gonna be happy to respond.
Yeah. I just want to thank you, Natalia, for a fantastic webinar. It's interesting because this webinar was developed at the end of last year, and it's remarkable to see how quickly things change and how much has changed since then. At the same time, it's quite fascinating to see how a lot of this advice about searching for work during the pandemic remains the same. It remains the same as it's always been, which is to get yourself out there, and this time do it virtually, to make connections with important people in your industry, build relationships as a way of finding work. So of course, you know, a couple of the themes that came out from your webinar were that technology and working from home are the two main largest changes. But you can always find work no matter what the economy. So there's been a lot of activity in the chat, and we'd love to see more questions from you. It's a very important topic. And you know, now's your chance to just ask our expert, Natalia. What do you think? What's on your mind? Is there anything that she hasn't covered that came up for you as a question? I think this just indicates you have done
We covered everything.
an exceptional job, Natalia, of covering all of the important points. Please be aware as well that you can always reach out to us if a question occurs to you after this webinar and at any time at our email addresses that Natalia shared with you. Any one of the three of us can get back to you with an answer to your questions. We can help you out. And I also wanted to remind you that we conduct these webinars every 2 weeks at the same time. And so the next one coming up is on May the 6th. That one is going to be presented by Alexi. And again, it's just another angle on this challenge that we all face these days of how to navigate job search during the pandemic. This one is about preparing for work during COVID, meaning like, how do you put together, pardon me, a resume and a cover letter and manage interviews and all of that kind of stuff. So that's important. We do have a question here, actually, Natalia, before we sign off. How long does it usually take for an employer to call you back after asking about your availability?
So first of all, when you have an interview, I'm not sure, do you mean like when they ask you during an interview, what's your availability? If it's on an interview, then you need to ask them as a wrap-up question, how long is it going to take for you for all the interviews? When can I expect to hear back from you with the next steps? So you need to take an initiative to ask them that question during the interview. You know, and if they say, well, right now we're doing interviews, and you're probably, if you're going to the next step, you're probably going to hear from us in a week or two. So they need to give you a specific timeline, basically, and tell you if you go to the next step, this is how, you know, a week or two that you have to wait. So if you don't hear back from them within a week or two, whatever they told you, you know, don't just, I'm telling everyone who's looking for a job, if you had an interview, don't just stop and wait for their call. You continue applying until you sign this offer that's on the table. This is, you know, it should be like endless process until you actually sign an offer and you start working for that organization, because things might change. They might find another candidate. They might freeze their hiring. You know, and you know, their plans might change. So you don't want to just sit and wait after this one interview for them to call you back. Always continue looking until you have this job all set.
Exactly, and that just reminds me, Natalia, of a reminder for our students that it is always possible to find work no matter what the economic times are like. And during times like this, what it means is that you have to work that much harder at doing it. So it literally, looking for a job is going to become your full-time job, and you should think of it that way. And if you approach it in a very active and proactive way, then you will find a result. And you want to know something? If you can learn these skills during a pandemic, you are set for life in terms of your job searching skills. You will always know how to find a job. So now's a good time to learn it.
One other thing I'd like to add, if you do get an email from the employer asking for your availability, you send it and a couple of days pass and you're still waiting for a reply, it is perfectly acceptable to send back an email saying, hey, I'm just following up on your last request. Let me know if there's any feedback around X, Y, or Z. You could always send a follow-up to the employer as well, asking for clarification or thanking them for the time.
Yeah, because if they're asking you about your availability, maybe they're considering you for the position, so it's totally fine to follow up.
Good idea. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, we're right at 11 o'clock. That's Pacific Standard Time, 11, 12, 2, or 3 o'clock, depending on where you're tuning in from. So thank you so much for joining us today. And again, we really hope to see you back here.